Yesterday, there was sun and there was rain, beauty in the mundane. And as the light startled our eyes, we let go of disguise. And now, there's something in the air, and a sparkly shimmer on our skin, restoring everything within.
Well, hey guys, welcome back to the Farmhouse Knitting Podcast. My name is Dayna, and I'm coming to you from the woods of Northern Illinois here in the U.S., and this is my podcast all about knitting, and we are on season 5. I can't believe it's almost, March. I don't know how I feel about spring knitting yet, but I feel like this itch to cast on some new spring projects. What about you guys? But that means I have to finish my winter projects first. So we'll have to see. I got to kind of reach the finish line of winter and then dive into some of the spring things that I'm dying to cast on. But yeah, this is a knitting podcast. I share what I'm working on and what I've finished. I do things a little bit differently. I'm going to share with you what I'm currently knitting and what I'm finished, but I'm not going to do like a whole showcase of what I'm working on. I'm a mom of 4, and I want to not feel the pressure to finish like 8 projects each episode. So I'm giving myself a little bit of a cushion, and I'm just going to share with you guys what I'm working on a little bit at a time, because that's going to help make me feel a little more sane in life in general. So yeah, how are you guys? I feel like I don't know. I'm trying to take back my whole knitting situation as far as I don't know. I feel like just like our houses get, I feel like I need to dust my knitting and all of its stuff off and go through and clean out my project bags of random yarn scraps. Just do a general spring cleaning of my knitting. And so I thought I would sit and knit with you guys for a bit today, and we would just kind of chat about that, and I can share with you what that looks like for me and whatever you do for getting ready for a new season in general, but also specifically spring. Then please let me know in the comments, because I feel like that's not something we talk about very often in knitting, is how we have to clean up after ourselves, which isn't always the most fun, but I think we get the most joy out of doing our craft when we kind of have a handle on things, just like in our houses and everything else. So yeah, I thought I would sit down with you guys today and we'll just chat spring cleaning with regards to our knitting. So this is, I actually will link below. I have a series of blog posts on my blog at thesealfarmhouse.com. And so each of the blog posts goes more into depth about how I do spring clean my knitting. So the first post is how I spring clean in general, but then I also really zero in on my yarn and my yarn collection, but also how I keep it and how I organize it and how I store it. The second post is about how I spring clean my knitting needles and that whole stash and collection. And then the last one is about my patterns, whether it's patterns that I made for the Seal Farmhouse or patterns that I printed off from somewhere. I'll also talk a little bit about digital patterns and how I kind of keep that organized, plus obviously physical patterns. So yeah, I encourage you to go check those out, because I do go further into detail about them. But I wanted to have a cozy little sit-down chat and just talk about it all together here. So grab a cup of something cozy and we'll just get started. So today I'm knitting where is the top? The Homebody sweater. Now this sweater is a pattern by Lady J Crochet. It's a knitting pattern, and it's had a lot of surgery from me, and the reason being is that this pattern is worked bottom up. Now you see I'm working top down at the moment. I finished the sweater completely and I wasn't happy with the length and also the bottom ribbing. I want to go down a needle size or possibly even two. It was too messy looking. It flared up and I didn't feel like the ribbing was long enough. So I'm gonna add some length anyway because I'm kind of tall and so I want that length there, but I'm also gonna kind of adjust the ribbing. Now I'm gonna do the same thing with my sleeves because there's nothing wrong with the sleeves, but I think it's gonna look a little nicer if I go down one more needle. And then I also want to do a different bind off. This is my first sweater that's not a bulky weight sweater. So this is worsted weight. I'm using Knit Picks Wool of the Andes, and the color was Grizzly Heather. And it's this really nice deep brown. It doesn't have any tweed in it. If it looks like it, it's because we have a white dog and he's added his own little extra fur. But yeah, I was almost gonna let this sweater go and just take it off the needles and be like, that's good, but it's not great. And I know it's not gonna be perfect, but I do want to fix the cuffs. I think I might even extend it and roll it under as a possibility. Excuse me. And have it have a clean edge. I don't know. We'll get to that part next. But so what I'm doing right now is actually I had to painstakingly take out the, I don't know, like 8 rows, 7 rows or so of knit one, purl one ribbing. And if you've never done that, Google it and then pray for someone who has to do that because it is so, it's very hard. Not hard. It just takes a long time. And when you're going all the way around for the 8 or so rows, you have to take out, so it's not as simple as like frogging a sweater and you just pull the thing and it all undoes. You have to go through each stitch and pull out, unweave it 2 different places for each stitch, for each row. But for me, it was worth it. I didn't want to undo the top because it would throw off everything. It would throw off my sleeves, my collar, and everything. So this was the easiest solution. And it still was a lot, but I'm, you know, I like I said, I want it to not just, I don't want to settle for like, okay, this is okay. Because in my head, I knew I wanted to be done with it and just call it good and a learning experience. But I was like, you know what? I think I can fix this. I'm not happy with it. In my heart, I wasn't sold. I didn't think I would actually wear it. And so I've made a lot of sweaters that I don't end up wearing because I haven't really figured it out yet with a sweater. Now, this is my first time with not bulky, so I'm still figuring that out. But, oh, me and sweaters, we're on a journey together. But we're going to figure this out. I'm feeling confident now. I'm going to continue knitting, and then I'll get to the ribbing. And like I said, I'll go down a needle size then. But so I'm on straight stockinette, and instead of working bottom up, I have taken out the bottom ribbing and I'm gonna work top down to finish it and then add some ribbing. Meanwhile, up here, the collar needs a little love, and I somehow ended up with a true turtleneck where it feels like it doesn't fit up against your neck, and it just feels like I'm a turtle kind of swimming where my neck meets my shell, and so it feels weird. I want to go down a needle size at least or 2, and I might even pick up less stitches or just decrease right away and have less. And then same thing, I really like the look of the rolled over collar collar, especially right up by my face. I don't think that looks as clean as it could. And then the other thing, but that it's part of the pattern, is that there's no shaping to the front. It's not like a crew neck. So it is like a little mini mock turtleneck type thing. So it's not going to have a shape, but I did want it to feel like it fit on me a little better. And I noticed it was looking a little wonky, so I knit longer, thinking, I don't know what I was thinking, but it just ended up like now it just kind of flaps around. So there's sweater surgery going on with this sweater. But otherwise, I mean, I really love this yarn. It doesn't feel scratchy. It's my favorite. You already know how I feel about Wool of the Andes. But yeah, I had bought this yarn for another project a long time ago, and it was something that I decided not to make. So I had so much of this yarn, I didn't really want to just make, I don't know, 20 different pairs of cabin socks. I was like, I'll make my sweater. And I did decide, so this is the homebody pattern, and you end up doing duplicate stitch to right up here at the top, homebody. I did decide I don't feel like this is the pattern for that, or not even the pattern, but it's not like the look. It doesn't feel like a sweatshirt, like a hoodie that would have words on it. And so I kind of wanted to, I decided I'm going to keep this kind of like a classic brown sweater with a little turtleneck. I've been wanting to knit a black sweater with a turtleneck for so long, so this will be kind of close to that. And then if it ends up working out, then I'll be inspired to do another sweater. But yeah, that's my sweater plans for the moment. My sister has really been into knitting sweaters, and she's really good at it, but this is my first really attempts into it. So I'm being patient. I'm trying not to just come out of the gate and be like, why can't I get it right? Because none of us are like that at all. So even if my sweater journey takes a while for me to really get a handle on it, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to keep trucking along. Plus now I'm at stockinette, and that just feels like, I don't know, reaching the finish line. You can see the finish line up ahead. So that's what I'm knitting. What I'm wearing today, if I can get my little toesies in there, I'm wearing my shorty socks. And these were knit with, oh gosh, I know it was Knit Picks. I want to say it was Stroll fingering weight. And I don't know the color, but it kind of matches my sweater, so I must be having a thing for that color. But it's some sort of tweed, so I'll link it below if I know I'll find it. I'm sure it's one of their regular colors. But so what did I do? I just knit a vanilla sock on 9-inch circular needles, following the Crazy Sock Ladies pattern, and it's a cuff down pattern, but I must have done a shortened cuff and obviously a shortened leg. I'll also link the video because I know I did a video tutorial about this, and just not really tutorial, but kind of like what I did. So more info about those are on there. But I love these. I didn't realize how much I would love shorty socks until I started making them. And sometimes, especially with jeans, you don't want socks that go really tall, or at least I don't, because I'm tempted to tuck my socks or my pants into my socks. I don't know, maybe that's just a me thing, which works better with leggings. But as soon as you start doing that over jeans, they're kind of bulky and it just doesn't work as much. So yes, these are just vanilla socks, but I turned them into shorty socks, and I'll link the video where I make them, and I will also tell you the yarn. Oh, I also forgot, so that I don't have the description box be like a mile long of who knows what I said when I said it. I am going to try to have an actual blog post for this episode and hopefully future episodes, because I feel like that will be a lot easier to just have it in one spot instead of like YouTube adds in like short links sometimes, and so you're like, is this the link she was talking about, or is this it, or is this it? So hopefully that kind of helps make it easier, and you only have to look for the one link in there. So yes, that is what I'm wearing. So we got what I'm knitting and what I'm wearing today. So let's spring clean our knitting because goodness, we need it sometimes. We need it. I can tell you my knitting bag, which is this, or I guess my notions bag, is very small. Not much fits in it. In fact, I'll show you. There's really not much exciting things in there. It ends up getting stuffed. I mean, I get yarn and like scraps. I don't even know. Someone hands me a Lego and it ends up inside of my project or my notions bag. And so that is for sure where I would say start your spring cleaning of your knitting, because it's kind of like our purses. I don't know, I feel like we're more likely to be able to clean out something starting small. And we've had practice doing it before because it's like a mini version of our purses or our wallet or, whatever we carry around normally. So that is, I guess, where I would say to start if it seems like all of your yarn or like your patterns you have, whether it's what you have in books, like tucked into pages, or on your computer, or on your phone, like if that seems daunting, definitely start with the notions bag because it's super easy. You can, once you know what the basics are that you wanna, what tools you wanna have with you for like every knitting project, that's easy to quickly spot, like, okay, what doesn't belong here? Is it the one baby sock? Yes, that can go in the laundry or get donated, or I guess tossed if it doesn't have a match. I don't know. So the next thing that I do is and this just comes naturally for me because it's kind of part of our decorations, but I'll go through my yarn. So I have a yarn hutch, and you can do this if you have yarn shelves or like those IKEA cubes, like the Kallax, or however you store your yarn, or if it's in baskets around your living room. That's the easiest for me, I think, to dive into next, because the patterns and the needles, like we can hide away our hoarding and our messiness in that a little easier because they're smaller. Like you can just go tuck them away in a closet or in some drawers. But if you've got a lot of yarn, or if you've got any amount of yarn, that's harder to just be like, sorry, sorry family or visitors, guest rooms taken over because I haven't gone through and cleaned out my yarn in 10 years. So yeah, I think that's probably the next, like most natural progression is to go through your yarn. So what I usually do is, I'm not great about doing this in between, like during the seasons, but definitely in between seasons because I'm already switching out decorations and stuff anyway. I will take down everything and I clean off all the shelves. If something got really gross in there, I'll clean it out because I also do keep plants in my yarn hutch. So every once in a while there will be like a spill of water that happened on the glass shelf, and so I'll just go wipe that up and everything. So cleaning it, and with everything out, because anytime I've heard about like, organizing and stuff, that's what they always say is take everything out first so you see the space you have. You can see it with new eyes. So then what did I do? I like to do kind of like have anchors, I guess I would call them. So for me, that's baskets. And right now I'm using just like this kind of basket, like a brown woven type baskets all over the yarn hutch. I first started with these like wire black baskets, which I really loved because when I very first did my yarn hutch, it was a mess and I had yarn toppling over. It was a yarn avalanche. And so having the baskets was nice to have that structure, and I wanted something specifically minimal looking because I didn't want the baskets to take away from the yarn at the time. Like if I could have just glued the yarn to the back of the hutch and make it look like they were floating, I probably would have. Or like use little wooden pegs to kind of make them look like they were floating. And I wanted the yarn to be like the main focus at the time. But yeah, using some sort of basket is definitely what I recommend doing if you have any amount of space for your yarn, even if you're using like cubes or shelves, just using some baskets to kind of give it a little bit of structure. And I turn the baskets on their side so that you don't just see the edge of a basket, but you kind of see the yarn presenting itself to you. So let's see, after I do that, I didn't write down any notes, so I'm trying to like walk through my cleaning process and organizing. Oh, so okay, I add my anchors, and then I kind of just go based on what kinds of projects I'm working on or what season it's gonna be. So like going into spring, I tend to go more towards like a neutral with some pastels palette. And so having your anchors and adding your yarn to it, then I do the fun part, which is decorating. So I try not to do too much of this as far as like tiny little knickknacks that might make it look crowded around your yarn or make it hard to get to your yarn. Because if it's hard to get to your yarn, you're not going to want to get your yarn. You're going to be like, well, this yarn, I don't know, it's hidden back behind my stash of glittery shamrocks for St. Patrick's Day, and I'm just not going to mess with it. It's too hard. It might all fall over. And then what do? We go buy more yarn or at least go shopping, go window shopping on Instagram. So I have found this has really helped me with my yarn spending. Just having the yarn where you can see it and it inspires you, and then also where you can easily get it. And that goes for projects you're working on too. So for example, this right here is a basket. I don't keep it on my yarn hutch. I keep it on our homeschool hutch, but it's what I have. It's ready. It's a project that I'm working on. And so if I'm sitting down, I can just grab it. But yeah, just having it there, that eliminates the first obstacle of being like, well, where is that yarn I was looking for? How many skeins of it do I have? I don't know, but I have pretty shamrocks in front of it. So I do try to limit how much I put there for decoration, and I'll kind of fill in the spaces around my anchors, if that makes sense. Which I think you probably have seen a picture, I've shared it before here, of my yarn hutch. It has like yarn, 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 plant, books, and baby's breath, and things like that. Like I feel like I spaced it out so that I didn't think it was too chaotic and cluttered, because for my brain, I need to be able to have a little bit of, I don't know, order in the chaos and cozy in the chaos, because it's our decorations too, is the yarn. So that's pretty much what I do with my yarn. Now's a good time to see if there's yarn that you want to part with, and if you want to donate it. Again, I go more into that in my blog post, like where you can donate it if you're not sure. If you have a box of I don't know yarn, I recommend holding on to it, because you can actually use it and kind of knit out of it all year long as Christmas gifts. So maybe it's not your most favorite yarn you want to keep, but you for sure don't want to donate it. And it's somewhere in between, like the I like this yarn, then you're knitting a gift or crocheting or whatever, a gift to someone that you care about with yarn that you know isn't like yarn you were just going to donate anyway, you know? So it feels special, but it's not your most special or like what you really have in mind for a project, that kind of yarn. So that's how I go about my yarn. And I will say, definitely check in with your knitting friends and see if any of them want your yarn that you're going to donate first, because I've gotten some good yarn from my sister where she was like, I don't want this anymore. And same with my mom. Like, it wasn't special to her, but to me, I was like, I know exactly what I'll do with that, or it ends up getting donated. So that's what I end up doing with my yarn. So my patterns. Now, this is a tricky one because there are kind of layers to our knitting patterns. For me, I keep a copy of physical patterns that I make and other ones that I'll print out if I'm working on them usually, or if I'm hoping to cast them on soon. I also have I have patterns in Ravelry that I've downloaded, but I've never printed them off. I think I've downloaded all of the ones that I bought. So there's basically downloads on your computer, physical patterns that you might have. And then for me, what I do is I will screenshot patterns or screenshot blog posts, or on my computer, I'll even drag the link or like drag the blog post to a desktop folder of knitting patterns, if that makes sense. So like a free knitting pattern, I'll actually save that link to a desktop folder. So if you can imagine, I have knitting patterns that I've downloaded or done like the drag and drop to this desktop folder. And then on my phone, I keep screenshots of patterns that I've seen, or I forgot what the percentage is, but you are allowed to take photos of like a book at, say, Barnes & Noble or the library or wherever else you get books. There's a certain percent of a book you are allowed to take a picture of to remember, and I forgot the percent is, but if it's a book full of patterns and you're taking a picture of one pattern, then you're probably okay. Again, check what that percentage, but percent is, but yeah, so needless to say, I now have I have patterns on my phone, patterns on my computer, and patterns that are physical. So I'm not going to get into the too much of the digital yarn pattern or knitting patterns. Again, it's in my blog post, but the biggest thing is kind of just consolidating. So you have the digital all together and you have the physical patterns all together. And if you want to go further and have a digital copy of everything, or if you're the opposite and you want to have a physical copy of everything, you for sure can move towards that step. That's depending on how many patterns you have saved, that is a big project. But for me, I definitely want to I guess, streamline my patterns on my computer and on my phone. So the biggest thing is to have those places that you're going to keep them, whether it's all physical, then you're going to take the steps to move to all physical or all digital, or like I'm trying to do, I'm trying to make all my physical patterns be in one place, and I'm trying to have all of my digital patterns. So if it was a screenshot or a picture from my phone, I'm sending it to my computer and saving that in the desktop folder along with the patterns I've downloaded and the patterns that are like a free pattern that I have a blog post that I am saving from someone sharing a free pattern. So if that makes sense, that's kind of, I know that's like very wordy, but I don't know how to, I'm not great at using less words. If anything, I use more words. So yeah, I encourage you to decide where you want your patterns to be and then just take that step to do that as much as you can. I mean, like I said, nobody's going to be perfect with how they store their yarn or their patterns or their needles. But let me show you my pattern binder. It's nothing special at all. It is a plastic binder that I wrapped with craft paper, so it's kind of crunchy sounding. It's super janky on the inside because that's where I taped it, but that's okay. I wanted it to be this cool thing on the outside, so when I have it on my shelf, it looks cute. So for me, I have my pattern binder. I have all of my printed, like my design patterns are in here. And I did try to like split them up into like socks, leg warmers, boot cuffs, and then here is like home. And then what else do I have? Hats and headbands, and then it gets into the miscellaneous stuff. And then it goes further into like more of the businessy stuff. My handy dandy little sheet that helps me calculate how much yarn I use, because I always want to know like how many yards I used of a yarn for a project. And then in the back, that is where I am going to add my regular like just for me patterns, because right now that's a free floating like paper folder that was just floating back here, and I don't like that because none of them actually fit in the folder pocket, so they all fall out. So I want to hole punch them, or if I don't want them hole punched, my little trick is actually I use these page protectors and I keep the pattern in there. So I'll show you an actual pattern. Ignore that half of my patterns still haven't been switched over as far as the name. The pattern's fine, but that's my old name that I designed under Sparkly Twig. So ignore that. Let me find you a good example of an updated one. Okay, the Sailor Farmhouse. So I actually will just stick in my whole pattern, all the sheets that go with it. And it's just in this little page protector. That way I'm not like stapling and trying to flip through. I'm not hole punching everything and trying to remember what all went together. I just have one pattern and then I can group them all together. So that's what I am working towards because like I said, nobody's perfect, definitely not me. And so I do have my patterns organized. I don't have them all printed out. I realized I don't have my my Oh Holy Night cabin socks. I never printed that pattern out, but I need to do that. And also my Cherry Blossoms leg warmer pattern, I think is still in my basket next to my bed because I was doing something with that. But yeah, something back here for, and probably in these because I don't think I want to hole punch all of those, for my regular like personal knitting projects that I have the physical pattern that I have saved. And so that's what I do. It's just a, I don't know, a couple inches wide notebook. I can fit still a whole bunch of stuff in there. So, or not notebook, sorry, binder. And so that is how I store patterns, and I just keep it over by my yarn. And then, let's see, spring cleaning your lovely knitting needles. I would say the first step is probably going and looking out in your car into the car seats and in couch cushions, because that's usually where I end up finding like a tiny US 3 double pointed needle or something, and I'm glad that nobody's sat on it since whenever I dropped it. But yeah, so the first step is making sure you can find all your knitting needles. It's actually a really good time to kind of sort out your projects you're still working on and deciding if you're actually going to do anything with them. If they've been a whip for like 5 years, are you actually going to use them, or would you like to take your knitting needles out of whip jail, works in progress jail? Because yeah, it's now's the time to like kind of gather what you have and, I don't know, write it all down, organize it, whatever you need to do. But for me, I use a drawer in my yarn hutch. I had my husband help me cut the wood and separate it into dividers. And then I use this like plaid washi tape and wrote down what size was where. So I have a section for hooks, a section for 0 to, I don't remember if it's like 3 or so, or 5 or 4 needles, and then so on all the way up until it gets through my knitting needle stash. And so that way it's easy for me. I'm not thinking I need a size 7 needle. Where do I look? I can go right to the middle of it and search for it. But if you do something like this, you could even use like a Cricut or, I don't know, a Sharpie if you want to write on the bottom. But you could even write on here like US 7 through 15 or something, and have it on your shelf just like that. And it's pretty, and you could make it as pretty as you want it to be and decorate it with like twine around it or lace or, I don't know, something like that. And then you also know what's in there. But even if you just have your knitting needles in like a zipped pouch, like I have like the interchangeable knitting needles, just going through and taking inventory and finding all the cords that go with it and finding all the needle sizes is a big step in doing a little spring cleaning, because like I said, they get lost, and sometimes you're like, I don't know, I haven't seen my size 8 circulars anywhere for like 3 years, and then you realize because they're on the baby blanket that I never finished. So now's the time to decide, am I going to pull that out and work on it, or do I just want my knitting needles back? Or make an inventory of what knitting needles you don't have, or you would like another pair of, I guess, and add it to your Christmas list. So once it's November and people are asking you what you want for Christmas, you'll know because you already went through and discovered what you didn't have or what was lost. So that's pretty much how I do my knitting needles. Another thing I really recommend is if you keep it in like a big area, separate out the pairs and either wrap like washi tape around it or rubber band around it, just so you have the two, or if it's a set of DPNs, just have all of them rubber banded together. Again, you can make it as pretty as you want it to, or just functional and just rubber band them. And I thought I was going to say something else about that. What was it? Oh, circular needles. I just keep in, I don't have it with me, but just a regular zipper pouch. It's clear, and I just put them all in there, and I do rubber band this part, the actual needles together, but then I let their wires I coil them as much as I can without it feeling like it's gonna break it, but yeah, then I know all my circulars are in one spot, then my interchangeable set is all in its thing, and then all my needles are in their drawer in my yarn hutch. So, oh, and the last thing I wanted to say is one thing that I always keep in my notions bag, speaking about needles, is at least one DPN of the size needle of whatever project you're working on, or just smaller. So for example, I'm doing this on a size, whoa, look out. I'm doing this on a size, losing my stitches, on a size 8 circular. So I have a size 7 in here. I always have a size 7 in here because it's what I usually use. But if I were doing a cabling project or I needed to pull stitches off and hold them, I already have this with me. So even if I was like in a room where my bag wasn't, or I forgot it on a road trip, I always, or not my bag, my extra needles, I always have this if I need to pull it off. And really, even if I had this size 3 and I needed to pull it off to cable it, say I was gonna pull off 3 stitches to cable it, I mean, you'd wanna watch it because it's very small and your stitches are gonna fall off, but it still works. It's very easy. I have, even in a pinch, before I learned this trick, sorry, we're getting so off. Well, it's not off topic. I've even used a yarn needle and I've stuck that in there and held those to cable. But yeah, I keep these in there now. And the reason I do a size that I'm doing, like the size needle I'm already using, or smaller, is because it makes it easier. It's not like I came in with this giant 13 and I'm trying to like shove my stitches on here and it pulls them weird and messes up the whole tension and gauge of what I'm working on. So that was just my random little tip that I thought of, that I was like, oh, we're talking about needles. I can give that idea to you, but you might already have something that works. But like I said, if you have spring cleaning tips for your knitting, for any of these topics, or if it's something I didn't even talk about, like I didn't even talk about your actual finished projects, like spring cleaning knit sweaters or socks, then yeah, let me and everyone else know in the comments, please, because we learn from each other, and it's more fun when you feel like you're cleaning with a friend, because sometimes cleaning's fun if you're in the right mood, and then other times you're pushing yourself through it. But yeah, I feel lighter after going through my yarn and kind of cleaning it, and I didn't even really get rid of very much. It's just I felt like I had a handle on life a little more. No one has a full handle on life, but I felt like I knew where some of my like essentials for knitting are. So yeah, I think that's all I had to share with you guys today. I really just wanted to pop on and knit a few rows with you guys and talk about how we keep our yarn clean and our yarn stashes clean. I don't mean yarn like let's go scrub our yarn, but like, I don't know, feel like we are slightly organized in the knitting world. So yeah, I will see you guys next week. Thanks for hanging out, and thanks for watching, and happy knitting and happy yarn cleaning.